There we go. So epic. Hey guys, it's 2:32 p.m. on the East Coast, and that means it's a late members only Wednesday. It's Wednesday, November 19th. Excuse me. It's been a weird week. I've been editing this Dan Burisch deep dive video, and necessarily that's forced me to take kind of a step back from everything else that I usually do, just to focus on this thing. And so I've kind of been out of the loop for a few days, and I just waded back in yesterday, and I saw there's so much bullshit going on. Oh my god. Um, so anyway, I'm glad I'm taking a step back. I hope you take a step back from time to time because man, it's crazy out there. Because I've been working so much on this Burish thing, which I'll explain in just a minute for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Uh, I've got a ton of material for it, and I thought I would workshop it on you guys today. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at some of the most interesting clips from the archival footage that I'm going through. There's hours and hours of footage of this guy telling the most unbelievable story. It's wild. But before we go there, special thanks to everyone in our chat. Great to see all of you. Shout out to our mod squad, Mr. Justin, Chris. I see is in here. What's up, Chris? Let's see. Hey, D-Nits is here. Blah 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 blah. Derek Kennedy. Hey, what's up, Derek? How you doing, man? Mr. Doubtfire, the Mr. Doubtfire. Good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. Members only Wednesday. It's a members only chat, so chat's closed to everybody but members. It's just our chance to kind of do a little back and forth with you guys and see what you think about some of this stuff. Huge shout out, by the way. I have this here. I got it this week. Another Doomer Friday light box from Mr. Justin, who is awesome. Unbelievable. He's been making these and sending them out. They're very limited. There's only a few in existence, and it's a light box that I turn on Fridays. And then this awesome night shift coaster kit, which I don't know if you guys in the Discord are getting these, but I've got a Dreamland Motel. We've got Night Shift Text logo. So cool. Thanks, Mr. Justin. You're awesome. And my kid has been loving these. He printed out these little teeny tiny. Uh, look at this. I don't know if I can make that. Can you see this? It's a tiny little. There you go. Tiny little gray and a little. He goes in a little sport model UFO. Very tricky to get that. There we go. You can kind of see. So my kid immediately stole most of these, but I kept the two coolest ones on my desk. So thanks, Justin, for all of that. Awesome stuff. And I've got some gear here. So I'm going to be giving this one away, this set to somebody. And I just have to figure out how we're going to do that. So stay tuned. We're going to be doing that at some point, probably tomorrow. Oh, by the way, there won't be a Doomer Friday. It's going to be Doomer Thursday this week. So we'll just be doing another live stream tomorrow because it's just a weird weekend. And we just scheduling wise, it just makes more sense to do it on Thursday. So it's a Thursday thing. The channel continues to grow. Quick channel update for those of you who are interested. We're at 43,598 subscribers. That's 1,400 new subscribers in just the last 28 days. Yay, team. Go us. That's awesome. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you for supporting the channel. And if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. Okay. Now, let's get down to the meat and potatoes today. This is going to be a weird stream. It's a little different than the way I used to do them. I'm trying to figure out a way to sort of reinvent this format. I'm not sure the other way was all that bad, but I think it can be improved. So I'm experimenting a little bit, and we're going to do a little more freestyle today. Today, if we had a sponsor, it would be the Burisch Archive. This is the website is burisharchive.com. You can go there. This was put together by Brian Jackson, your friend and mine, friend of the show, friend of mine, and just an all around cool dude, and Dan Burisch fanatic. We connected after I put out a video on Dan, and he had assembled this tremendous collection of documentation on Dan's background, his education, his training. There's a whole video library here that includes most of, I'm pretty sure all of the interviews that he's done. I haven't found anything that's not in here yet. Brian's been at this for some time, so he has gone all the way down this rabbit hole, and it's unbelievable. So we'll be pulling a little bit from this today, but huge thanks to Brian Jackson for putting this together. And like there's photos in here. Here's Dan working. There he is with Paola Harris. There's Paola again. So we're going to be talking about some of this stuff, just proof of who this guy is. There's been a lot of controversy about Dan, so we'll talk about that in just a moment. But burisharchive.com if you want to go follow along at home and check it out. And I think Brian's updated this recently with some new information. So there's always something going on. So let me explain what's going on with Dan Burisch for those of you who don't know, just so you can get up to speed. Dan Burisch or Dan Crain. He goes by two different names. He legally changed his name when he got married. So as I have recently discovered in my research, because his wife had a child and he wanted to have the same last name as the child, so he took on her last name. And so at one point he's known as Dan Crain, and then after he gets married, he's known as Dan Burisch. So for those people who find that confusing, that's what's going on with the names. All right. Dan Burisch, I'll refer to him as Dan Burisch for the rest of this live stream, but Dan Burisch is a microbiologist who claims to have worked at the ultra secret, ultra secure S4 research facility, and also at another place. And I haven't gone deep enough to know if this is the same, if they're referring to the same place, but I believe it's another location that he refers to as codenamed Sweetness, which is a really interesting term because I've heard that elsewhere. I've heard other people mention this place. So he supposedly worked at Area S4 on this biological research team. And their purpose was to study a captive survivor of a crash that had gone down in, I think it was, I want to say mid 50s. One particular crash. They retrieve, there were apparently three beings in the craft. One of them goes to S4. We don't know what happens to the other two, but one of them goes there. And this is where Dan Burisch and this team of biologists are assigned to do research on this extraterrestrial biological entity, which is known as J-Rod. And there's a whole explanation for the name J-Rod, but it has to do with some numerology that is apparently important to this being. So while he's working on this assignment, he is a junior member in the group. And at one point, he gets promoted to the team lead, which doesn't make sense to him. And he is kind of confused by this. But then eventually he is working with this being, J-Rod, and they have a crisis kind of situation takes place, and the J-Rod communicates telepathically with Dan Burisch, and things just kind of go wild from there. Now, why is this all so interesting? The thing about the Dan Burisch case is I didn't know anything about it forever. This was just something that completely flew just past me. And I don't know how I never knew about this until uh, about a year ago, year and a half ago. And I found this interview, which is by a guy named Bill Hamilton of Dan Burisch in a hotel room. And he is talking about his story, and he's sort of walking through who he is and what his background is and what he's done, and just kind of laying it all out. And the thing about it that I couldn't let go was how, you know how when you watch somebody and maybe in a meeting at work or like a corporate type setting, um, a salesperson or you see certain people they put on a face, right? There's like a professional face that they could put on, and we all do it, right? When you're at work, you just have to kind of do the thing, right? Um, and then there's like the real person who comes out. Like if you know somebody really well, you kind of know who they are when they're relaxed and their guard is down and they're just sort of like normal, right? Um, and unguarded. The thing with Dan Burisch is when you watch this guy talk, his body language, his vocal intonation, his delivery, his pauses, every single thing about the way this guy tells his story to me comes across as totally believable. Now, I want to be careful here because I'm not saying that the story isn't crazy. The story he's telling sounds bonkers. It sounds bonkers. But that's only half of why it's so interesting. The other half, this is like that movie The Room. Okay? This is that for UFOs. If you've seen that Tommy Wiseau movie The Room, you know it's like the worst movie ever, but it's also the greatest movie ever because it's so bad it's good. It's like an Ed Wood kind of a thing. This is like that, but in a kind of a different way. The story is simultaneously totally fucking unbelievable. And yet he tells it so well that if this guy is an actor, he should win an Academy Award. This guy is better than Anthony Hopkins. He's better than Robert De Niro. He's better than you pick your fucking actor. I don't give a shit. Pick somebody who you really love, you think is the greatest actor ever. This guy, if he's lying, is better than all of those people. And if he's making this up, he's made up the equivalent of like a 900-page novel, which people have done, of course, but he's like committed it to memory. He's delivered this story throughout hours and hours of different interviews over many years with different interviewers asking him the questions in all kinds of different combinations. And I'm sitting here just this week and last week, I'm watching all of these videos just to kind of as research and pulling selects from these things. And it's so consistent. And what's most boggling to me about the whole thing, and you're going to see this in a minute. We'll go there. I know I'm not. I'm trying to sell this to you, but I hope it's working. But I want you to see it. But what's most mind blowing to me is not even the stuff that he knows or claims to know. It's the stuff that he doesn't know. It's the places where he's telling his story and he kind of like he doesn't know the answer to some of the stuff, right? So what he's telling you, he will describe to you in excruciating detail in one of the clips we're going to look at the entire security protocol like process for getting into S4. Okay, so he's going to talk about what it's like to get on the bus, what it's like to go there, what it's like to get off the bus, what it's like to, when you're on the Janet airline plane flying out of the airport to go to S4, how all that works, how he got his orders to go get picked up to go to the airport, to go to S4. Then he's going to talk you through how he goes into the facility, the security checkpoint, right when you go inside the door, the next security checkpoint, the weighing station. He talks about every single detail of the protocol that he has to go through every single time he goes to work. And it's fucking crazy. If you are one of those people who is like, you look at whistleblowers recently, right? The people at the September 9th hearing, like Dylan Borland, just uh, Jake Barb, pick any whistleblower that you like. Bob Lazar is a great one. Um, the thing people are really interested in is what is actually happening in the room where people are doing the work on the stuff, right? Like if Bob Lazar is telling the truth, and I believe he is, if he worked in the hangar where the sport model was stored, then his testimony, we can use that to build layers of understanding about what else might be going on, right? So you kind of have to choose the things that feel the most true to you here and decide what you can believe and kind of go from there, but also take into account the person delivering the message. So Burisch is kind of like that. He's an insider. He's claiming to have come from within the program. He's going to tell you every single detail of everything that he did. And then he actually goes on to explain what the big conspiracy is more or less about. And when I first heard it, it sounded just as crazy as anything else. But what's really interesting about this is that the more you listen to it, um, the more you're going to realize that it is being echoed very recently by stuff that people have just started saying in this second wave disclosure moment that we're in. So, anyway, I know this is very clunky. I'm excited about this. I want to explain it to you as best I can, but I just need to show it to you because it's fucking crazy. All right, if you want to start with just the most interesting jumping off point, I did a video of this. How old is this? This is a year ago, and in the last year, this has been my most successful video on the channel by far. So I'm going to play the first 2-3 minutes of this. It's called "The Astonishing Story of Dan Burisch, S4, and J Rod," and it's just basically 2.5 hours of me reacting to one interview. But the first minute or two here is going to give you an idea of what you could expect. So let's take a look. Holy shit, that is just the beginning. That's just the first taste of where this goes. I don't know about you guys, but just the delivery, just the physicality of the way that he's telling the story, um, it's so believable. Let's go on and watch a little bit more of this. I'm sorry, I'll stop interrupting.
This, I'm not going to lay on and talk about how intellectual I was at the time about it. It scared the hell out of me.
Okay. Right out of the gate. First initial reactions to meeting an extraterrestrial biological entity for the first time. That's not something you've heard many people really describe. Okay. Most of the whistleblowers that you hear from are going to talk about some like technical aspect of something they worked on or something really weird that they saw from a distance, or maybe something that they encountered, when they were in the course of their duties. But I haven't heard many people describe what the first 5 minutes of being in the room with a being that's non-human uh, it feels like, until I heard Dan Burisch explain it. I've heard Linda Moulton Howe recount someone else explaining what it was like to be in the room when when they were introduced to one of these beings. But to hear Dan explain it, it rings true for me. Um, because it is fear and confusion and sort of uh, an odd sense of being off balance and freaked out. That feels like the most honest reaction, right? I can't prove to you that it's true that this guy worked with a J Rod, but as this story unfolds and goes on, and we look at more clips from what, as Dan describes, the ongoing process of working at the facility, you're going to see that uh, it just gets better. It just gets so much better. Um, Okay, so I'm going to go to this next clip. These are all from the Burisch Archive YouTube channel, by the way, which you can go to and subscribe if you want to. You can check out all of these videos. As I mentioned in the top of the show, I'm in the process of compiling a sort of a best of video that's going to be the key parts of all of these stitched together into one. Um, the trouble I'm having with it is that there's so much. If I put it all in one video, the video is going to be like 3.5, 4 hours long. It's going to be like unwatchable. So I might need to break it into smaller pieces just to make it digestible for people. But let's take a look at this next clip. And this is Dan describing the process of getting suited to go into the room where the being is being stored, which is called the clean sphere. So let's take a look and listen to the technical detail of his explanation of how this process actually works. Okay, here we go. Sorry, guys, I had to cue this up.
Systematic medicals by a physician.
The physical aspects of preparing for an entry into the clean sphere.
Fine. Well, we would undergo a medical examination, at least during the early time frame of the introductions, the 92 time frame, 91 to 92, when we were doing introductions. We had regular systematic medicals by a physician. Following that, we would be suited, we would be catheterized, plugged, and suited. Communication apparatus was placed on our heads. We had a cooling system set up. It was, for all intents and purposes, it was a spacesuit. It was a total encapsulated suit, something like what you would find in a NASA facility. Not so much something that you would see, well, for instance, at USAMRIID or CDC. That type of level 4 suit. It was more of a regular space type suit with joints. We were suited up, we were pressurized, and then walked with our cooling system and our hosing down a ramp into the ambassadorial suite. Following that, we were led up a gantry-way, which had been moved into position by the clean sphere, which had been previously rotated up through an iris through the floor. He was held actually below the ambassadorial suite level, and that was raised up as needed. What they did with him down there, he didn't say, and they didn't tell me. It was not a need-to-know issue. Apparently, they dealt with the cleaning of the sphere and all of that down there. The regular housed animal maintenance, as they treated him. We would be led up the gantry-way. The hoses would be hooked into an interior system inside the doorway, which was exterior to the clean sphere. And it was called the exterior system, in fact. But then we would be let in, the door would be closed, and we would be pressurized inside of the gantry-way. Following that, there was a drum system that was set up. Once there was an equal pressurization between the gantry-way and the clean sphere, we would then be told to proceed forward. I would raise a hand in acknowledgement. We were not supposed to talk at the time at all because nothing verbal around the specimen, around the J-rod. Why, I was never told, but we were not supposed to talk around the J-rod. I moved the drum system and re-hooked a secondary set of hosing inside the clean sphere, checked the pressurization, and once that was done, the door to the clean sphere would be closed behind me, and I would presume that the pressurization remained the same in the gantry-way. Following that, I would do my business inside of the clean sphere involving contacting the J-rod and removing the samples.
Okay. Okay. I see some people in the comments. Let's see. Let's actually go through the comments because I see a few people have some thoughts about this, and I want to go to those. Um, Ed the Alien 69 Clint plus Burisch equals Kool-Aid. Are you saying I've consumed the Kool-Aid? Is that the problem with Dan Burisch? Too many people are buying into his bullshit. Uh, those tinted glasses. He has chronic dry eye. My mother has it. Remember those transitions lenses? I remember when those were new, and you would walk from one room to the next, and they would get darker. A lot of nerds had those. Kairos DCC. I'm a member of the team at Code of Reality. We are awaiting his re-emergence. Interesting. Dan lives. Dan lives. J-Rod lives also, I think. J-Rod lives. He could be describing a real event and not this subject. That's true, but it's true that he could be describing a real event and not the subject, but he is describing the subject. I mean, he's in an interview that goes on for 2 hours, and he's answering question after question about what it is to actually get into this facility and how it works. Now, there's another video that he put out. They actually put out, Dan put out his own documentary DVD in the, I want to say, late 1990s or no, early 2000s. And some clips I'm pulling from that for this other video that I'm working on. And in that, he talks about, or the first 2-3 minutes of it are actually the first few minutes of the movie Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman. And they show going into the CDC facility and then going down into all the different levels where they get down to the most secure level. And it's basically, they're using that to sort of explain that's how this process worked for Dan. Now, I'm going to back up and show you some footage. This is pulled from the piece that I'm working on right now. So warning, it's a little rough. It's not my polished final edit, but you'll get to see a little taste. This is about we got about 15 minutes of stuff to get through here, so I hope you'll enjoy this and indulge me. I'll try not to stop and interrupt too much, but take a look. This is Dan explaining the detailed process of going into the facility, getting brought there, and actually entering and going through the security protocol. Moody Mongol says, no, Clint, but we must maintain a distance from his words. I order to judge him, fall into his words story. Then we become easy to fool, in my opinion. Okay, fair. It's fair. Can you be bamboozled by someone who's convincing and charismatic? Sure. It happens every day. It happens all the time. It's happened to all of us. It's happened to me, I'm sure. I'm not so naive to say that I've made it this far in life without ever being fooled by anybody. So certainly that happens. But I would ask you this: um, there seems to be a very vocal, reflexive, and like pissed off response to Dan's story, and it seems unnecessary to me. And I'm just going to say it like this: it seems fake. It seems canned. Because there's no reason for it. This guy disappeared. He turned into a fucking ghost. At 2011, he went away and he's been in hiding. He doesn't show up. He's never done another video. He hasn't put out any books. He's certainly not making any money. He has one website that looks like a GeoCities website from 1997 that no one fucking goes to except like 12 UFO nerds. One of them is me. Um, if this guy, if the counter argument is that he's some kind of a grifter who made up a crazy story to go out there and get that UFO money, I don't buy that. That to me doesn't make any kind of sense. It just doesn't. For one, having been around at that time, like the UFO scene in the early 2000s was ridiculous. It was crazy. And really it was mostly just coast to coast AM and some regional little things that were going on. It certainly wasn't anything like what it is today. And so the idea that somebody would be looking at that and go, well, yeah, that's my way. That's my way in. I'm going to break in through that door and then somehow become famous. That motivation strikes me as extraordinarily unlikely. But okay, people do it, sure. Um, so then you get to the story itself. Well, it's a fucking epic. I mean, it goes on. This could be a 6-season series on HBO, and that's probably not even the half of it. It's got everything. It's got time travel. It's got secret underground bases. It's got covert military units. It's got advanced bizarro physics and paradoxes and extraterrestrials. It's got Orions. It's got all of these weird aspects. And if you were just pulling them out of your ass, that's a lot to juggle. It's a big story to juggle all of those different things over a period of years and be consistent with it. You have to ask yourself why. Like, what's the point? Who would do that? Who wants to be known as the fucking weirdo who talks about goofy shit? It doesn't make any sense. So I get it. I understand why people are, I'm just as skeptical about other things. And for some reason or another, I find this one particularly captivating. I guess it's just the fucking, I don't know, it feels like a Hollywood movie. It's awesome. But I'm not saying it's real. I don't know that. I can't tell you it's real. So don't get me wrong. I'm not out here trying to convince people that this is really the true story. What I will say is, if you're asking me what I think, I believe that this guy believes what he's saying happened to him. I'll put it that way. It's as likely as anything else. To even be in this conversation, right? To even be having a discussion about UFOs and UAPs and non-human intelligence and all of the other things that leads to, that can of worms that opens up when you start down that road, you have to be willing to suspend disbelief a little bit. You've got to be flexible on some stuff. So I also have weirdness against people who are like gatekeeping in the UFO space, like, oh, well, that's a bridge too far. We can't go there because that story is too weird. I'm here to tell everybody that one is just too fucking weird. I don't know about that. That's not cool either. There's room for skepticism. It's important. A functioning immune system is important, but you know, just entertain it, because what else are we here to do? Until we know, we don't really know. So we might as well have fun with it. Okay, so let's look at this clip and we'll come back and talk about it. Here we go. Dan Burisch, teaser clip from the long form video that I'm putting together. Rough cut. You're seeing it here first.
Our historic first view of the newcomer's ship.
We were picked up. I was told by Sam that I would receive a series of tone codes and they would give me a name. I'd be picked up outside and my mom and my dad would regularly see me. In fact, as this was going on, get picked up outside the apartment on Channel 10 Drive, saluted by U.S. Air Force, they had stripes and they were in a normal
enlisted men.
Right. And placed in the back of a small sedan, black sedan, and would be transported over to the Hughes Executive Terminal.
What is your firsthand knowledge? How do you know that he ever went to McCarran or Nella? Well, first of all, 18, 19 years old, you kind of wonder what's going on. So couple of times I followed him when he had his own car. I was a little leery, like everybody else. You never know. But it was true. He was going to Nellis. His dad drove him to Nellis also. And he was going to McCarran. And one day he told me that if I would go by Hughes Airport near McCarran, that I would see him get on the Janus airline. And I did. I seen him get on me. He said, Mom, if you want to see this, come on over and see it. And I drove by and I waited a few minutes and I watched him get on the plane. And it was my son getting on the plane.
I would be brought into the aircraft and taken back to the tail of the plane. And then I could see and I could hear other folks loading in up front, and a drape would be pulled, and I was told ultimately by one of the male enlisted personnel who were actually, there was a U.S. Air Force actually on board this aircraft, that those were engineers for Groom Lake, and you're here, they're there, and never the twain shall meet. I would hear them call pyramid, pyramid, pyramid.
That was the call sign?
Well, that was something that I think the pilot may have been communicating with Groom Ground Control.
Okay.
And then we would descend into the Groom complex, taxi off to the right-hand side, then there was a left turn, and then we would move over to the right. So it was land, right, left, and a move over to the right.
So being somewhat familiar with the layout of Groom Lake, the main runway runs north and south.
Yes.
Almost.
Yeah, it would have had to have been from that way, so when we were making the left-hand bank, we were making a
sweeping 180-degree turn.
A sweeping 180 turn to go from north to south.
Okay.
That would make sense. And was taken in a small buggy, almost like a small Jeep, golf cart type.
Was it open or was it closed?
It was open.
Okay.
It was open. And by a couple, a very large looking hangar, the thing looked like a mountain as we passed by the right hand side of it. And a couple buildings into the left, was taken inside of a building, was identified by security again, Nellis Security. They looked like, they were in cami and they looked like standard enlisted security officers for Air Force.
Okay, you were saying they usually wore camouflage and they had, what, a black beret?
Yes, on the outside. I saw them walking on the outside and they had black berets, and the gentleman that actually would drive me to that location when I was being driven alone in the buggy versus when we were actually walked one time with a larger group, but when we were driving in the buggy, the gentleman had, it was a standard security officers.
Desert camouflage?
It was desert cami, yeah.
With a black beret, and then you said that when they would go inside the buildings, they would fold the beret and tuck it under one of the epaulettes?
Under the epaulettes, yes, upon the left shoulder.
Oh! It's getting weird. Guys, I can't look away. It's so good. It's so good. There's just so much detail. Oh my God. So his mom, why was his mom talking about picking him up? Well, this is when he was a kid. He was a young kid. He was 19 years old, and he was going out to meet with the recruiting team that was bringing him into this program, that was overseeing his education, that was basically making sure he was in the pipeline. And his parents didn't know what the fuck was going on. He would get these calls. He would pick up the phone, and then he would get a name, and then he would get like a tone code. Back in the old touch tone, phone on the wall days, you'd pick up your phone, and it would be like some Stranger Things, like beep, bop, boop. You get some kind of weird code, and then it would be like a name and a time, and you'd go to the place and get picked up in a car. Then they would take him to the airport, and his parents were like, where the fuck is our kid going? This doesn't make any sense. So they get in their car and they follow him. And Dan tells his mom, he's like, you want to see me go to the airport and get on this flight? It's crazy. You can see. Yeah, you want to see? I'm doing this. And so his parents followed him down there and said, sure enough. So that interview was with Coast to Coast. I think it was Paola Harris, the UFO researcher and author Paola Harris, who actually wrote a book with Jacques Vallée, which I have on the shelf back here behind me, and who is awesome. She lives in Italy. I interviewed her. She was one of my first interviews on this show. But that was what the whole thing with the mom is. So in case people are wondering, let's go on. We're just getting warmed up now. This is the beginning. There's so much more. Are you ready? Do me a favor, guys. Hit that like button. We're at 126 likes. I've got 400 people in here. Let's get this up to 200 likes. Come on, people. Help me out. I promise this is going to blow your fucking socks off when I'm all done. So here we go.
There was a white bus, this gray-white bus sitting there off to the left. He said, over there. I said, well, aren't we? No, over there. That's when I was taken down to Papoose for the first time. Got into this bus, and they told us shades down. And so we actually helped in closing the shades in the bus. I could tell it was this was much more gravelly, and it all.
Oh no, an error occurred. I may have to refresh. Hold on, guys. Let me see if I can fix this. YouTube. Okay, here we go. Let's go back. Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. Deep state.
He said, over there. We were actually walked one time. There was a white bus, this is a gray-white bus sitting there off to the left. He said, over there. I said, well, aren't we? No, over there. That's when I was taken down to Papoose for the first time. Got into this bus, and they told us shades down. And so we actually helped in closing the shades in the bus. I could tell it was this was much more gravelly. And it almost felt like a couple times as the guy was driving, he was driving too fast because I could feel the bus sliding. And they said, okay guys, up and out. And I noticed as soon as I got out onto the ground, there were two blue lines. Outside of the blue lines, they looked like somebody just did a spray painting. I mean, it looked bad. And then there were two red lines that were sprayed on the outside of it. He says, gentlemen, you stay inside the blue lines. If you wander out of the red lines, he says, you see the red lines, both of you. He said, I want you to both acknowledge this. I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, if you wander outside those red lines, they will shoot you. I was extremely frightened at the moment. Shoot me. And he said, they will shoot you. Now I saw for the first time the security at Papoose. They were standing there with the small automatic weapons, staring at me. It scared the hell out of me when I stepped off the bus.
I can imagine.
They were it wasn't just their presence, it was the way they were standing there. You can project presence, and of course I learned to do that as a police officer and all of that. But they were standing there with their weapons on you. I could tell that they were pointing their firearms at me. So we got off, and no bravado at this moment, and we followed our way up around to the right. It actually looped a little bit and around to the right to a door where one of the officers was standing at the door. The door appeared like it was inset. Mm-hmm. So the door was opened up, we went inside. There's a table there with a security officer. We were asked to identify ourselves. We did. We signed our names. Okay. We were asked to put our social security numbers and date of birth on there as well. Photographs were taken of us at the time, actual Polaroids. From there, we were escorted in past what was called a hand scanner. We actually placed our hand on a scanner. Didn't see anything rolling over it, no light, no nothing like that. It was just a flat black screen. A door was then opened from the left to the right, and this is a sliding door from the left to the right, and we went through what appeared almost like an archway. And we were escorted around to the right immediately and down to a nurse's office. Well, we are getting into it here. Down to a nurse's office. There was a male nurse present. He asked us to strip down, which we did.
So you're buck naked at this point? Or are you
yes, sir.
You're down to your skivvy?
No, he had us buck naked. Every time into the facility, you are stripped down to your birthday suit I was. There was never a time that I walked in with my clothing that I ever got by two guards with firearms in back of me, the male nurse in front of me, and went anywhere past that with my own clothing.
Now here's my next question. Did they weigh you coming and going?
I was getting there.
Okay.
We get weighed 3 or 4 times in this facility. There are weighing pans at the workstations down on level 4 where you have your private workstation. You are standing on a weighing sensor.
And this is to determine whether you're taking or pocketing anything that comes out of the facility.
Including anally.
Exactly right. Just like they would do in a federal penitentiary.
Yeah, there is no way to get anything out of there. Not a way on God's green creation. They've got cameras. When you walk in, there are ball cameras. Not that different from casinos.
Exactly.
It's watching every move you make. There are ball cameras in the restrooms. There is no, you can't do anything without being watched in this facility. Nothing. You're not in there not to be watched. You're in there to get a job done. And that's what the way the drive was in there. It was, you're here to do the best job that's possible for any human being, get it done. That's just the way we were treated. And that was initially until things calmed down when J1 came in a couple times and...
Oh. MJ1. Who's MJ1? MJ1 came in a couple of times and then they palled around. Who's MJ1? Let's find out.
Arms went around and I got treated like the favorite son, but still...
Now, J1, what does that mean?
He is the official honorary first position leader of the MJ-12.
And they call him J1?
MJ1 is Vice Admiral John Mike McConnell, former director of the National Security Agency. And here he is standing next to Dan Burisch in a photo from 1990. Here he is. You can look him up. That's who this is. We'll come back to that at another time. We're going to put a pin in that for now. It's just an important data point I want you to keep on your conspiracy map, on your conspiracy board.
You've been asked to completely disrobe. You're being followed everywhere you go by cameras and by armed guards. So did they expect you to do your work in the nude, or did they take you to a place where you would go to a locker room, get dressed, that kind of thing?
No. We were initially weighed in there on an inset pan that was inset into the floor, and it was on the left side of the nurse's desk. I saw no monitors up in front of me, no indication of my weight, nothing. And the nurse said, okay, fine, thank you.
Okay, so this is, let me just jump in here. I told you, I promised you I wouldn't jump in too often, so I'm doing my best, but this is an important moment here. Remember earlier when I said, pay attention to the details that he claims to know, but also notice the things that he doesn't really know. Like, he's making up a story about walking into this facility and going through a security checkpoint. But he's telling you that the pan that he stands on is inset into the floor and that there's no display to show your weight. It goes somewhere else. If you're just casually lying about getting weighed when you walk into a facility, why would you invent a different kind of scale and make that just an interesting data point? I want you to watch these little things, because there's parts in here where he's like, I don't know. I don't know why they did that. It doesn't make sense. Pay attention to those too while you're listening to everything else.
The weighing sensors don't go to the nurse's office. The weighing sensors go to the communications area.
Okay.
Surveillance area where everything was being watched.
Okay.
We were allowed to keep our glasses on initially. After I was read into the Aquarius program, my personal glasses were removed. And when I would come down to decon on level 4, they would give me a new set of glasses to wear, which were my prescription.
Okay.
And ultimately, when they did the bell, when we were going in for the J-Rod, the front of the bell was beveled, and my prescription was actually beveled into the front where I could see clearly out of the front of this bell.
Wow.
There was nowhere you could stand in the facility where there was not a guard with an eye on you.
Okay. Well, that makes
So
sense.
the physical security was such that there was the surveillance, of course, security. The physical security was
Line of sight at all
oppressive.
times.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, there was a lot of FaceTime with the physical security.
Sure.
We would be walked to the elevator. The guard, which would go with you in the elevator, would step in and brought down a couple levels. But the thing about the behavior of the security officers was they would get in and they would put their back to the numbers, which were covered anyway.
Okay, here we go. This is one of those little weird details.
They had flat covers over the top of them, so there were no numbers.
And they'd put their hands behind them and ostensibly, I guess, count down and go pop, and they'd push a button and down we would go.
So
down
you
I'd
never
go
actually knew which floor you were on?
Nope, not initially. It was.
So now these guards that would follow you as you went from one place to another, did they have kind of a routing schedule for you that would show them where you were actually supposed to be going?
No, they knew. They never had anything in their hands like a schedule or anything like that.
Okay.
They knew exactly where we were supposed to be taken. So I could tell that these gentlemen were briefed prior to being escorted.
Okay.
They knew exactly what to do, and they were extremely professional in doing it.
Okay, so far, where are we at? Let me know, chat. Do we think this guy is for real? How many out there in the chat are on board with Dan Burisch so far? How many people are skeptical? How many people think he is completely full of shit? Let me know in the chat. I'm very curious what you guys think. And we've got more to go here. There's the best is yet to come. We're not even, believe me, we're just getting started. Let's go to the chat, see what you guys have to say. Toilets, do they weigh? How do they handle this is Sarah, were there scales in the toilets? Just wondering. My assumption is that you would take that into account, that throughout the day people's weight fluctuates, and there must be some kind of method for accounting for that. This is just one of many layers of security that he's describing. So I don't know, but the idea of weighing people before they, when they come in and out of a facility, makes sense. Why wouldn't you? Pat G wants to know, why isn't he in front of Congress if this is true? Great question. Brian Jackson is in a better position to answer this, and I may actually, Brian, I might just call you to see if we can have you walk us through this. But my understanding is that Dan Burisch tried to do the right thing, came out, made a series of public statements, gave interviews. His plan, his purpose, and his explanation for doing so at the time was basically that he wanted to get out of the program. He was done. It was awful. He describes it as just being fucking awful. The working conditions are awful. The way they treated the J-Rod was awful. The people that were in charge of the program were awful. The whole fucking way that it was being done was just bad. And this guy, now I'm telling you this as someone who's just been digging deeply into this for a couple of weeks now, and I'm giving you my assessment from that vantage point. So just know that I reserve the right to change my opinion should new information come about. But at the moment, what I see here when I look at Dan Burisch is a guy who is a hippie. I see a guy who's a nerd, who's obviously very intelligent, but he's kind of a peacenik and a hippie. And he's not the kind of guy who would wind up in a classified military program under any normal circumstances whatsoever. His circumstances, however, appear to be quite abnormal. And he discusses being an abductee. During his childhood, he was taken aboard a craft, experienced an abduction, and at least one. He later explains, as part of his ongoing interviews about what happened to him, that abduction had a lot to do with his path in life, and that he believes something was possibly done to enhance his ability to understand biology or his affinity for it. And he found himself just really drawn to that topic. It's an interesting data point in the story. He later goes on to explain the role that the J-Rod is basically playing and why they're here, why these visitors are showing up here. We're not there yet. That's a lot. I'm going to take you through the rest of this clip, and then we're going to look at something even more amazing. So stick with me, guys. It's going to get even better.
We would come out an elevator. It's a real cute trick that they do with elevators. We would get out, and there would be an attendant standing there wearing an all-white smock. And it was a sort of a closure smock around the neck. During the days where I had my ID, I would still have my ID on me on my white gown. Now, mind you, we're shuffling down this hallway before we get into the elevator, and there are other personnel coming out, such as Robert would have been coming out from a bay to a lab out through that hallway. So we felt kind of, like guinea pigs all the time when we went in there. But he would be standing there down on level 4. And he would take from us, when we had our badge. Before then, he didn't. He just escorted us around to the right to decon. We would degown again, everything would come off, and then we were given socks for the first time. And everything was white initially that we had. We would be sprayed off. We would be coated, actually physically coated with a spray. And we had eye cups and all of that we would put on.
Okay.
It would physically coat us with a spray.
Is it an antiseptic of some
Yes, it wasn't betadine, thank God. I didn't know what it was. It was not cold. It was comfortable, and they sprayed us completely down. And I started laughing one time in there, and I was joking. We weren't supposed to talk. We were supposed to keep our mouths shut. And I said, you're not painting me blue or nothing. He says, no. He says, we're not coloring you or nothing. It was clear. It was clear. From there, we were washed, actually washed over our heads with a hand sort of a spray, and told to go ahead and to gown up. And there was another white smock. It was a separate one, different one, all clean on a hanger on the right-hand side. We would go immediately around to the right to the briefing room. That is where we got our first indication, true, honest-to-God indication that we were dealing with something extraterrestrial. The King Tut.
Okay. So he gets brought in, he gets photographed, he gets weighed, he has his fingerprints scanned, his palm scanned. He's brought down into this decon facility where they literally make you strip down and they spray you with some kind of antiseptic chemical to decontaminate your body. This is every single time you go to work, every single time. And then you've got to go put on new clothes and then go into the briefing room, then find out what the fuck it is you're supposed to be doing today. This is like going to work. Okay. Here we go.
Container was opened up, the King Group, it's called the King Group training update tapes. The cabinet was open and we were given manuals to study, and we knew at that point that we were dealing with something that was ET, and that was more than sobering.
I can imagine. Well, I mean, was there any kind of preview to this introduction to the fact that you were going to be dealing with an extraterrestrial entity?
Little John, Sam H., he's a colonel in the United States Air Force. Or so I've been told. He wears the right uniform. Anyway, he tacitly acknowledged that this was something off-world one time prior to being in there. But that's the only indication. That's the only indication. Because I said, this looked like something alien. He looked over and he went to me. And that scared me a little bit, but at the same time, I thought he was bullshitting me too.
Sure. Okay.
And I still thought, until the briefing book was put down in front of me, and these blue briefing books said DTIC on them in white bold letters.
The Defense Technical Intelligence Center?
As I understand now. Years ago, I didn't even know what it meant.
Now, was this like a 3-ring binder?
Yes.
Or was it a fully bound,
Yes.
hardbound book?
No. This was a 3-ring binder.
Okay.
And it had sections in it, actual tabbed off sections. And we were directed at different times, a couple different times in. We were actually brought into that level just for the purpose of going to the briefing room.
And
However, it became extremely well known once we ran into the term extraterrestrial biological entity.
Okay, so this
When-
EBE term is not just something that's been tossed out in science fiction and
No.
various movie formats. This is an actual term that's used by the military.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you've heard Dan explain the process of getting the call, getting sent to a location, getting picked up, getting brought to the airport, getting on the plane, being seated, looking ahead, armed guards everywhere, getting off the plane, getting on a bus, going to the base, getting off the bus, the fucking red lines on the ground, the blue lines, go outside the blue lines, go outside the red lines, we shoot you. Go outside the blue lines, you get a warning. Go outside the red lines, you get shot on sight. Go into the building over there, walk in, armed guards pointing guns at you the whole time. You get to work. Now you've got to start the hour-long process of going through security. What I mean, imagine, just think about going to the airport, taking off your shoes and doing all the stupid shit they make you do. Think about what he's talking about and doing this every single time. So he goes in, gets decontaminated, gets weighed, gets photographed, gets fingerprinted, gets hand scanned, gets all of this stuff is done. And it's not just him. There are other people that work there too. He's part of a team. And he's brought into this team. So it's a bunch of different biologists who are all working on this level. They go down to the elevator, they get off on the level they're on. And the entire time they're working, they're standing on a weigh station. That's basically their whole workstation has got a scale underneath it. So if anything is moved, they know. And I guess the idea is to make sure that things aren't getting transferred from place to place. Like no material from location A is moving to location B. And you can just, if for some reason something changes, I guess you would be able to tell. I don't know. I'm going by what he's saying. So all of this happens. And now we're going to look at a clip coming up where he describes the process of working with the J-Rod being. So on level 4, there is a level 5 that goes, so going down levels from ground level 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the biolab where Burisch works. On level 5 is where they keep the J-Rod. It's a special biological containment floor designed specifically for the unique needs of this being. And it is held inside of a containment unit known as the clean sphere. The clean sphere is a glass or plexiglass or some kind of see-through dome that is completely sealed, and it's a contained, pressurized environment that is tailored for the J-Rod inside that clean sphere. And when they need to do work on the J-Rod, they raise there's an iris in the floor that opens up, and the clean sphere comes up. The J-Rod's inside, and there is a airlock. And then the biologics team will go into the airlock. Well, one guy will go in. And you heard Dan describe that process. You have to get catheterized. You have to get a physical, then you get catheterized. Then you get into the suit, which is he calls it a totally encapsulated suit, like a space suit with a big glass helmet with his eyeglass prescription beveled into the glass. Very interesting detail, specific detail. Why would that be important? Well, think about it. If you wear glasses and you're inside of a containment suit and your glasses fall off, how are you going to paw at your face and get your glasses back on? That doesn't make any sense. It makes sense to me in that they would bevel the prescription for his eyeglasses into the front of his helmet when you hear what he says next about working in the clean sphere. Because as you'll see, he describes it like basically working on the moon. He's like, when you go into the clean sphere to work on one of these, on this being, it's a long process. And if something goes wrong inside the clean sphere, the reason the procedures are so strict is because they can't get to you. They can't pull you out in time to do anything for you. You may as well be on the moon. That's how he kind of describes it. If something goes catastrophically wrong and you are in Fucksville, Alabama, inside that clean sphere, the process to get another guy in there to help you starts with, they have to fire a pressurization valve that stuns the being. Then they've got to suit up another guy and get him into the airlock. And that process can take 30, 40 minutes to an hour. So it makes sense. And when you hear it just explained that way, it's just it's such a captivating story, and it's so rich. It's hard for me to imagine that a guy just sits down every couple of months in front of a room full of UFO nerds and then spins this wacky fucking yarn for no money, for no reason, and then disappears and ghosts everybody and goes underground. It doesn't make sense. Neither here nor there. But let's take a look at the chat really quick before we go on to the next segment. Brian Jackson, Clint is correct. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the support. Um, I'm just scanning back here a little bit. Hello from Ontario. Hey, Ontario, what's going on? If you were there, escape would be your every thought. Imagine being a prisoner there like J-Rod. Yeah, it would be awful. That's the whole kind of crux of the story, right? So the J-Rod identifies Dan as someone that it can communicate with. And as you're going to hear in a moment, he goes from being a junior member of this team to being promoted to the sort of team lead guy. And that is because the J-Rod seems to respond more to Dan Burisch. And so when they realize this, they go, okay, well, we're going to send Dan in. He seems to have a connection. But there is a reason for this that plays out later. And we find out what the J-Rod is trying to do. But there's a little strategery that's happening behind the scenes. Juan says, looks like Friday is the day the UAP NHI documentary, Age of Disclosure, is going to hit. Yes, it's going to drop Friday. So I'm excited to watch it. Brian Jackson says, Dan worked under the auspices of Majestic. He was very close to MJ1, who protected Dan. Dan was given permission to temporarily speak openly about the Aquarius program. Now, my understanding about Majestic is that they are a sort of unofficial, loose coalition of people that share a common goal, but work across agencies, across governments, and across legal boundaries to accomplish things that would otherwise be impossible, and to do so in a way that escapes all accountability and oversight. Is that good enough? That's what I think, MJ. That's my understanding of how Majestic works. It's a conspiracy group. It's people who know each other who get on the phone and they want to make some shit happen, and they, do what they need to do, and they pull strings, and they have people that they work with that are outside of the normal chain of command, and they probably have a whole different way of doing things that is completely opaque to the rest of us. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but MJ12 plays a significant role in Dan's story. Brian Jackson says this may have been an attempt to gauge reaction from the public, I think is what you're saying. See what public reaction would be. Strategery. So, yeah, strategery. Remember those old posters of George W. Bush, and it was like, you miss me yet? I do miss him. I'd give anything to have President Bush back in office. I'd give it all. Lassie says, hey, Al, just in from the NASA press conference. They mentioned Comet a very, very, very large number of times. I wouldn't expect much exciting news from NASA on this. But maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. J-Rod was a willing participant, and apparently this was agreed upon before the 1953 crash. Okay, so here's something else. Dark things are happening now with children. Yeah, dark things are happening. So Dan talks about the dark stuff, and he says some really interesting little asides, which I don't have pulled for you today, but I'll just tell you some of the little fun facts that he throws out. One is that when you're in the elevator system at this complex, you can hear as you're passing between floors. You can hear what's going on each floor, which is, yeah. I mean, if you spend any time in an elevator, sometimes you can hear what's going on a floor, depending on the floor and how loud it is. And he said this was just a peculiar feature of maybe the way that the place was set up, but you could hear what was going on different floors. And he said there were some floors where you could hear animals screaming. And he gets really freaked out when he talks about it. He's like, you can hear just like the most awful, awful sounds. And then he says, occasionally you hear people. And he said that was really unsettling and it was very difficult for him. And initially, when he is recruited into this program, this is something you'll see in the finished video. When he's recruited into the program, he tells them no. They basically they tiptoe him in. They contact him and they say, "Hey man, you're a bright kid. Would you like to see the world? Maybe you'd like to be all you can be. What if I told you you could work on a very special project, but you can't tell anybody and you can't publish anything, but you're going to get to see the craziest shit that you can imagine. How would you feel?" And Dan's like, he's like 19 years old. He's like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. He's a young guy. The timeline, I don't know the exact timeline, but he basically agrees to join to go forward to the next step. So this agreement kicks off a process of recruitment that is stair-stepped, where basically they first they bring him into like they've got like a trailer with some lab equipment in it, right? Like a shipping container, little setup with some gear in there. It's a lab. And they bring him in and they go, we want you to just look at a few slides. And they give him some slides and they go, tell us what you think about these slides. And he looks at them and he sees some things that are weird and he remarks about them. And he's like, I don't know. And they go, okay, that's interesting. And then they do this again and they bring him back another time. And they're like, they take him to a different facility and they're like, we want you to look at some other slides. They show him some different slides. And then they bring him into this facility where he describes the whole route. He's like, I get picked up by an Air Force guy in uniform and a guy in a black polo shirt with a triangle on the left side of the chest, an equilateral triangle pointing down and some red writing. Didn't get a chance to read what I couldn't remember what the red writing said. He said, they pick me up. They put me in a car. They take me to a helicopter. It's a Black Hawk helicopter with blacked out windows. He gets inside the helicopter. They fly him to a facility codenamed Sweetness. Don't ask me. UAP Gerb knows what it is. I don't. Codename Sweetness. Look that shit up. He goes to codename Sweetness and he gets into this facility and they're like, we want you to look at something really special. And then they take him over to a station where he looks through this eyepiece, but he has no input into the system. The slides he's looking at are being fed via an automated system into the microscope by someone else. And so Dan is only allowed to give verbal commands. And then someone else will put the next slide in, or they'll zoom in or zoom in. They'll do whatever adjustments that Dan needs to do. But he's just to look at the slides and give his opinion. He does. Then they let him run the system and he's given access to it and he's allowed to start analyzing what he's looking at. And that is the point where they start to realize, oh, there's something very strange here. And he understands this is extraterrestrial. He quickly figures out that based on what they're asking him to do, they want him to ascertain the biological weapons capability of some of the things that he's looking at in this cell culture from the EBE, the J-Rod. And it becomes clear to him that they want to weaponize some of this. And he's like, I that's against my ethical boundaries. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the offer, but I'm just gonna go, and I will see you guys later. To which they respond, tell you what, why don't you stay here a night? Stay in our on location dormitory facility. We have one right over there. Why don't you sleep here on it and let us know what you think in the morning? So Dan is about panicked at this point. He's freaking out. He's like, I am so fucking far underground. I am so deep into this complex. He's telling this story, right? I'm going to show all this to you. You'll get to see this. Not today, but in the final video. I just have to tell you about it because it's so good. And he's like, I'm in this place and they're telling me I've got to do this work. And I told them no. Now they're like, sleep on it. And they don't let me leave. They put me in this fucking place. He spends the night and then he wakes up the next day and he's like, no, I'm still out. I'm still definitely out. And then they go, well, here's the problem. You kind of have seen a lot of shit at this point. We can't really let you go. So, what if you just stay here forever with us? And he's like, what the fuck is going on here? And he says, am I going to wind up in one of these labs that you're doing experiments on? And the guy's just like, well, who knows? We kind of do our own thing out here. And that's where they leave it. So Dan reluctantly agrees to go forward with this program. And the entire time he's working in it, this whole project, he is just like, this is fucked up. He doesn't want to be there. He's not interested. He's interested in the biology. He's interested in the science, but the whole experience of working for these people is fucking god awful. And he makes no effort to cover that up or hide it or get away from it. He is just like, it is an awful place to work. Exactly what Bob Lazar said. The same exact review, if you will, of the facility that Bob Lazar gave. Let me go back to the chat and see what you guys think here. Ed the Alien 69 says Burisch is selling us BOFA, fill in the blanks. What's BOFA? Am I missing something? What's BOFA? Clint, the elevator story may have been from the Dulce base where Dan was taken at times, may not have been at Papoose. Yes, there are two different bases, and the security at both is super strict. And it's just, I put them together so you can hear just like beat by beat by beat and watch his face react to like, and then they're like, take your fucking clothes off. And I'm like, what? If you sat me in a room and showed me all these tapes and I had never heard of Dan Burisch and you were like, this guy is straight out of the fucking program and he is trying to blow the whistle on all this stuff and he's recording these interviews. We want you to watch these and tell us what you think. If you asked me to do that with just cold in a room with no time with this story and I'm just walking in off the street, I'd be like, that guy fucking did it. This is for real. Something about this guy, just, I can't let it go. I can't look away. I don't know what it is. I'm trying my best to articulate it, but I've got to tell you guys, I think Dan Burisch is the sleeper hit of the summer. I think he is the lost whistleblower. I think this guy will eventually turn out to be the real deal. I can't prove it. I don't know it, but I feel like that's what's going to happen. We're going to watch another clip in a second, and he's going to talk about being in the room with the J-Rod, what happens in the room, how this thing talks to him. And what you're going to find out eventually is that I'm going to explain it. I'm going to try to explain it. So work with me here. You know how recently, the last couple of years, maybe you've heard whispers of future humans. Have you heard Ross Coulthard say that phrase, future human? I've been told they're future humans. I've heard future humans a number of times. And that's really interesting because Dan's talking about future humans back in 2002. Apparently, according to Dan's version of events, what happens is there is a catastrophic event in the near future. That event causes humanity to bifurcate. Some humans stay on the planet, some humans and go subterranean, some leave. Which, from today, sitting here in the end of 2025, doesn't seem like an unreasonable future scenario, right? Elon wants to go to Mars. Jeff Bezos, all these billionaires are building bunkers underground, right? We have deep underground military bunkers that are made for tens of thousands of people, cities underground, for some kind of cataclysm, whether that's a nuclear holocaust or some other catastrophe. So is it possible that that could happen in the future? Maybe. So some humans leave, some humans stay and go underground. The ones that go underground go on for another 45,000 years, according to this story. They build an entirely different civilization. They have this whole new, it's all based on numerology. They have this entirely different system. This is what we would call the Greys. These are the P45s. And then the other group is the Orion group. This is the group that went out into deep space and started a new civilization out there. And they are known as they're what we would call the tall whites or the Nordics now. This is all back in 2002. He's laying all this stuff out. And we're hearing about that again. We're hearing about it from Eric Davis. We're hearing about the Greys and the reptilians and the tall whites or the Nordics and all these different things. So it's just an interesting data point that comes up. According to Dan's story, these groups are basically in competition with one another to affect the event that leads to the outcome where they actually get to exist. It's a very weird, he calls it the convergent timeline paradox. I told you this is a lot. We'll come to that later. But for right now, I just want you to watch this next clip and tell me what you think. This is going to be Dan explaining to Carrie Cassidy, here we go, what it's like to be in the room with the J-Rod and then what happens to him.
Said, I remember, and hello.
Meaning the person who it was, you call, what is his name again? The J-Rod looked at you.
Kaela
looked at you when Steve was in the clean sphere with him. He turned around and looked at you.
Yeah, he turned around and looked at me. I was part of the B unit team to start with. In fact, that was going to be my actual occupation in there, was assisting the chief scientist in going into the clean sphere, until he identified me as somebody, I guess, special to him, Kaela, and he wanted me to be the person to go in there. That's why I was promoted ultimately to the working group leader in there, because I didn't have the background, did not have the seniority, and it was not my place. But that's why the promotion happened. It was
okay,
a lot of promotions happen in the world, I think, but
but to go back
the
to
Peter
where
principle.
He went onto your chest. He told you he wasn't going to hurt you. Did they actually zap him then, or did they?
I don't believe so, because I would have felt he began to entrain me immediately and strongly, and he relaxed me. The encapsulins, the endorphins were going big time. They entrain on several levels, and they're able to relax you by actually flooding you with natural opiates.
Mm-hmm.
Like a runner's high.
Right.
So what happened after that? I'm assuming
or
you
the
got
high
to
that you receive as you're going through natural death process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you naturally kick out the,
Yeah.
But okay. But what happened after that?
After that, I began to sink away from what was going on in the clean sphere, and with the panic that was going on over the radios, because I heard them. We had two separate units, an A unit and a B unit on the radio. They were like separate radio frequencies. And I could push the button and talk independently, but they were stepping over each other, screaming, saying, get a secondary unit ready to get me out of there. They were going to enter in to pull me out, and you can't just
step in there that quickly. I mean, they've got to suit somebody up, bring them in, and you knew before you were going in there that the J-Rod, we were trained that they were a threat. And
Really?
so that we were not supposed to communicate privately with them or anything like that, that we had a certain job to do and we were to get it done. And that was the scientific job of removing the samples and then the studying of the samples for the back engineering. These are the reversing like chemicals.
The idea was to reverse an illness that he and his people have, which is the 52.
The 52s, and what we were trying to do initially, jumping off onto the biology a little bit, what we were trying to do is we were trying to actually strip the exterior cytoplasm off from the cells and produce cells which would be independently functioning. Then to understand those cells biochemically, genetically, so that those cells could then be re-added as a graft into the J-rod to attempt to ameliorate the neuropathy. That's what one of the stated goals was. Easier said than done. But
Okay.
we were told, though, that if something would go wrong in there would be no immediate fix. You weren't a million miles away, but you were several thousand when you were inside there. So you were very alone, even though you had radio communication. It was essentially being isolated on the space shuttle, if you will. And not that easy to get you home. Because they had to do all of the repressurizations of the gantry, bring somebody new in, then get you out, then get you detox, the cleansing, the decontamination, and then get you out of there, then get you out of the suit, then give you medical treatment. So we're talking a couple hours. So if something goes wrong in there, and they were potentially able to harm you because of the entrainment, you're dead. And that's, you accepted before you ever accepted going in there. But to a large part, it wasn't bravado on our part saying it's no big thing, but you had to accept that just to work inside the facility. You knew that if there was a contamination, if the alarms started going off, the old joke was get in a straight back chair and lean way over and kiss your goodbye. It was over. Because if the alarms started going off, you were sealed into the facility, and they were going to pump the gas in and fire the fuel air device. Boom. That's what the explosive valves were for, the so-called escape tunnels. For you to get out in case there was an emergency, those were blow-off vents. So they could blow off and explode the facility, blow off out of the papoose range, and keep the remainder of the facility intact.
So, but your experience with the J-Rod and the other ones you've met has basically, were you afraid for your life at any time? In other words,
I was afraid for my life when he stepped toward me. Absolutely, I was.
At that moment.
At that moment, but it was a very transient. It was an ephemeral moment.
How did you?
It passed off very quickly because biochemistry helped me calm down when he trained me.
How did you feel, though, in your sort of interactions with him? In other words, do you feel that you said you didn't remember knowing him in the original meeting in the spaceship, right?
Right.
But he remembered clearly.
He remembered.
So, did you feel that you actually developed a friendship with this being?
I absolutely did.
And that it grew over time, or did you feel that it was instantly there?
That's a good question.
Guys, remember when Jake Barber was talking about transporting the 8-gon ship? I don't know if you guys remember this, but he was doing the recovery, crash retrieval, and he was moving this craft from one place to another using his helicopter and a 150-foot line. And he talked about being telepathically in communication with whatever was on board the craft. And he said he cries, like he chokes up on camera and gets teary eyed, and he kind of like, you know, has a little emotional moment. This is a trained military special operations guy who's sitting here telling you that he's worked on multiple crash retrievals and they've gone out and got these things and brought them back. And he said that during his experience, he was brought to tears by this something that connected to him telepathically. Dan Burisch is telling the story of being inside the clean sphere with the J Rod. And this J Rod, there is a process that you use to go into the sphere, and then there's a process to approach the being. And he explains it as you're supposed to enter the sphere, you've got all your stuff on, you rotate your hoses, you get inside, you're in your pressurized suit, you're supposed to take a step forward, and then you're supposed to hold up one hand, and then the J Rod is supposed to take a step forward and hold up one hand. And that is, Dan calls it, he says, it was what team did he say it was? Like that, not the communications team, but it's the people in charge of communications with the being. And they designed this whole process that's supposed to show that you're there for a non-threatening reason. You're ready to approach the being, and he's signaling, I'm ready to, participate. This whole process is supposed to play out, but as it's going, Dan is in constant telepathic contact with the J Rod, and they're having a whole conversation back and forth. Interestingly, Dan talks about what it physically feels like to be in a telepathic link with another being. And he describes it in a way that I didn't hear anyone else ever describe it until just very recently. And he says it's like echolocation. It's like a dolphin thumping. It's like an auditory, almost like you could feel it like thumping your head. And it's like a womp, womp, womp. And then it clicks and you're entrained with this being, almost like a Bluetooth connection. You get like locked in on them. And then the two can communicate back and forth. And he says that they're in communication. The team outside the sphere is watching all this. They understand something's going on, but they can't quite tell what it is. They know there's some kind of communication happening, but they can't really pinpoint it. And then as he's in the sphere, the being he takes an unexpected step towards him, and he gets startled. And he steps backwards in his suit, which is this big bulky suit, and he trips and falls. And he lands on his back. And then the J-Rod approaches him and looks into his eyes, and that's when he gets telepathically entrained with Dan Burisch, and the two of them have this link now. And during that period, Dan describes being flooded with endorphins. His body just, your body just like dumps all these endorphins, and you're just like in this drugged state. And meanwhile, there is this, like that scene in Total Recall with Quato. It's the data dump, the data download. And it's all getting, he's getting this huge download of information into his mind. And outside the sphere, the team is freaking out. And they're like, should we fire the repressurization valve? Should we stun the J-Rod? Should we send somebody in to get Dan? They're on the radio. They're calling back and forth. And ultimately, he's able to get back up and right himself and get the situation under control. But that starts a whole series of events that kind of unravel from there. It is insane. It's an insane story. I'm here to tell you, I'm the first one to agree. It's crazy. But damn. I mean, I'm having trouble seeing deception in this man's behavior. I'm not saying that what he's saying is true, but if you're asking me, do I see any obvious signs of deception? I can't pinpoint any. I know some people in the chat are like, oh, he blinks too much, or he doesn't blink enough, or, or I don't know, he looked to the left or he looked to the right. Apparently eye contact has something to do with the telepathy, at least as it's being used in this particular way. I don't claim to understand it, but I've heard that described by multiple different experiencers and contactees and abductees. In fact, there have been a number of abductees. They're mentioned in Bud Hopkins' book, Missing Time, and David Jacobs talks about it a lot in his work with abductees, where people talk about being regressed and they're on board a craft and they see one of the beings and they are in their hypnotic regression, they're panicking. They're literally just losing it. And they're freaking out because they feel like if they look into the being's eyes, they are going to be like torn apart. There's something about the being they know they can see inside your whole reality. They know everything there is to know about you. Some kind of like mind rape that these things can do. And I've heard that and read that description a number of different times. Like I said, I don't have any firsthand experience with non-human entities or extraterrestrials, but I could tell you this: uh, it's a very specific reaction that sounds pretty reasonable. I'll give it that. Larry Jones in the chat. Thanks for the super chat, Larry. Any group doing these things would consider people disposable assets. He's lucky to be alive. I agree. There was, this is one of those things where I think my sense is that they can't just choose the pick of the litter from the top 1% at any school. They've got to like find the people that they can have reliably work on a program like this that will agree to not publish any of their work, that will work under ridiculous constraints, that will not publicly talk about what it is that they're doing, and that will be reliable. That's a tall ask. That's a big ask. I don't know how you fill those personnel requirements and do so in a way that can be plausibly denied. So the secrecy requirements around a program like this seem to me to make sense in the framework of the constraints on recruiting people.
Let's see what I got in my pocket.
I just got an alien invasion of my own. What do you have? Oh. That was my little guy. I'm gonna dress him up like an alien so I'm gonna tell him he can come in here as long as he's wearing the little alien suit. Clint V2 2.0 has entered the building. Yeah, that's my little dude. So let me know, guys. I'm curious in the chat. What do you guys think about this? I'm just kind of scanning through while we wrap it up for today. But I'm curious. I am of the opinion that this is a highly technical program that has a lot of moving parts. There are all kinds of different groups probably working on different aspects of it. It makes sense that it would be just all over the place. They would be pulling people to work on it that they could literally just dispose of if they needed to. As someone in the chat just said, these people would be viewed as disposable assets, expendable. So you're not going to be going to top universities and recruiting the best of the best out of the top 1%, because those people are going to go off and work for, whatever. They're going to make super money, and they wouldn't work under the constraints of a program like this. So necessarily it makes sense you would be forced to go like find people. You got to go hunt these guys down and bring them in, and then you got to make sure that everything about them checks out and they can understand what it is they're working on. And maybe that's what is going on. It seems that way, right? The people who have been talking about the way things work inside the program, who have come forward lately, seem to have been suggesting in a sense that we are not making the progress that we thought we were making, or that people think we might have made. We may be behind. Maybe China or the Russians are ahead of us in some key way, and that has something to do with the stovepiping of the information surrounding this topic. That makes sense, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? DNitz believes Dan. DNitz says, that's why I believe Dan. I think Dan did what he could. He does not have the protection to go in front of Congress, and he's not really making any money of his stories. He literally told his truth and let the people decide. Yeah. Yeah, he said what he had to say, and then he was gone. Where is J-Rod now? That's a great question. J-Rod, according to Dan, was pushed through a Stargate and sent back home. More specifically, an Einstein-Rosen bridge device that is technology that we were allowed to work with or given, or we figured out, reverse engineered from the J-Rods. And this device is like a local wormhole generator. And when you have it oriented a certain way, you can see future possible timelines that are more likely to happen. And if you orient it another way, it acts as a portal that you can send stuff through, communications, things, physical things. They tried sending animals through, they tried sending a person through. As far as I understand, the person didn't survive. And apparently, there are natural wormholes or portals that exist in certain places on the earth that are activated during various times based on whatever happens to be going on in the local region. And there's some kind of a process that takes place. And then there are artificial wormholes or artificial portals that can be built, manufactured, and like used. And that the people at S4 at that facility had access to some of this technology, and they used it to try and figure out what was going on. But J-Rod specifically was pushed through what I understand to be a natural one of these wormholes. And Jay, and he was, and Dan even describes this. He talks. I got to get this clip for you guys too. He says that that the J Rod has to be moved around in like a little buggy, like a little bubble, a little Pope mobile that is like a Segway type device that's got a little like contained, thing on it, so that it can have its own atmosphere and its own pressure, and that has an attendant that pushes it around. And this is where, if they need to take it from place to place, they have to put it inside this thing and then move it. And apparently there was a meeting that Dan was asked to be at that involved the J-Rod and some other beings, and he pushed it through a portal. At least that's what he said. Draculosis, Dracolosis. I can't pronounce it. You can use those people in psyops; they can still be assets. Time to rewatch The Fifth Element. Brian Park. Yeah, it's a weird one, guys. Grelch. Oh, geez, here comes Ashton. What happened with Ashton? Heidi Knudsen says time travel is, was, will be possible according to a boatload of physicists. So, okay, I'll leave you with this. Let me just tease another chapter of this whole Dan Burisch saga. The convergent timeline paradox. The reason that everything is all fucked up to begin with, and why this is all so secret, right? Some of you may be wondering, why exactly is there a huge cover up? What is going on behind the scenes? What is the big story behind it all that brings it all together, ties together all these loose ends? Well, according to Dan, time travel backwards in time has caused, apparently the way time works, there are multiple timelines that are stacked on top of each other, and we're experiencing bits and pieces of different timelines at the same time, concurrently, which is how he explains what's going on. Sounds very much like something that would explain the Mandela effect. So slightly different futures, slightly different presents. On top of this one, someone goes back in time, they change something small. There are ripple effects. a second timeline branches off from that timeline, and there's all these ripples that go out separately, but they still overlap in some places, and there is some um, transference between the two. Some people are experiencing one timeline more than they're experiencing another timeline, for instance. So it's not universal, it's not uniform, it's kind of spread out and around. The more that time travel is used to try and repair this problem, the worse the problem gets, the more the knitting comes out of the sweater and it all starts to unravel. And that is the problem. And Majestic is the group that is trying to unfuck this situation. And apparently it has everything to do with the J-Rods and the Orions trying to go back in time to do something that involves us. And they have placed these weird paradoxes on our timeline. And it's very bizarre. I can't claim to understand it. I don't claim to understand it. But that's the story. And it's super weird. But when you watch a video from 2002 and he's explaining it, and then you're watching, like, you're looking at the Mandela effect today. Like, you know what got me today was the Jaws thing from James Bond, Moonraker, Jaws, the guy with the metal teeth, and then at the end, the girl with the braces who smiles at him, and then they have this whole, they run off into the sunset together. And then now there's a version of that movie where she doesn't have braces. This has been around for years. I didn't notice this until very recently. And I'm like, wait a second. If it is true that we are experiencing, the different people are experiencing different versions of the present, and there are multiple timelines intersecting with this one, weaving through it, it might look something like that, right? From within our world, looking at, if you were inside a simulation and someone copied and pasted another instance of the same simulation on top of the one you were in, and you had duplicate events happening differently from one another, but more or less like the same core event, but with a different outcome, and these were overlapping, it would look like, to the inhabitants of that simulation, the participants, it would look like what we describe the Mandela effect to be now. Yes? No? That's what he's talking about. The convergent timeline paradox. Sarah says that could explain the random past life memories I experience. It's gnarly. Multiverse theory, MIB censoring, multiverse theory, excuse me. I bit the shit out of my tongue the other day, and it's like talking is, if I talk too quickly, it hurts. Pat G, Clint, are we still getting a part 2 with Courtney Brown? Yes, yes. So I'm going to be traveling a little bit in December, and my interview schedule is getting tight. I'm trying to wrap up my last few interview slots that I have left by the end of this month. So that's about another 10 days or so. And then in December, it's going to be tricky. So probably if I don't get them before December, it'll probably be January when I get Courtney back. I've got, but I have been working on a bunch of interviews that I'm going to be releasing soon. They're going to be coming out in December. But Courtney's awesome. Yeah, I would love to get him back. Brian Park says the Large Hadron Collider started this, the Mandela effect. We are the variables. Clint, you tried to get Patrick Jackson on. I reached out to Patrick. I had a great phone call with him. We talked for about an hour, and I just told him I loved his book, and I loved his whole interview that he did with Chris at Area 52. And I had many questions for him, and we had just a great chat. He was awesome. I wish I would have recorded that conversation because it was basically the interview that I wanted to do. But I was like, hey, can we just talk about setting up an interview? And he said, sure, give me a call. So I talked to him, and we in that conversation we were like, well, we should definitely do a formal interview. And it was like, okay. Um, and then after that, we just weren't able to nail down a time. So we've been playing email tag and phone tag back and forth, trying to pick a time where I can actually sit down and chat with Patrick about the Sphere Network, which is still blowing my mind. But it's his schedule and availability, and he's in the UK and I'm here, so it's just the time difference. It's tricky to sometimes line these things up, but we're gonna make it happen. Patrick is gonna be on the show at some point. Dizzy Lizzy, thanks for the super chat. Fantastic and intriguing, Clint. Thank you for your hard work and passion for this. Can't wait to see more. Thanks. That's awfully kind of you. MIB censoring. Clint, you should try out astronomy or astrophotography since you're already a professional photographer. I've looked at astrophotography and I think it's cool, but it's not what captivates me. It's not the thing that draws me to photography. I have a friend who's really, really good at it, and he goes out all over South America and does these like unbelievable uh, photos of the night sky, and it's just to be really good at astrophotography requires a flexibility to travel and that I just I don't have. So for me it's a little more than I can do. But maybe 10 years ago. Um yes, Clint, why don't you check out the moon? I don't know. Maybe I will. D-Nets, the chat is on fire today. You guys are great. Thank you for the lively chat. Mr. Justin, I used to do astrophotography, long nights of sitting in the cold, letting the camera do its thing. Yeah, and it's cool. I mean, it is cool. I'm going to I'm going to Peru for a couple of weeks. I'm going to be all over Peru throughout December. I'm going to Nazca, probably Cusco, most likely. Lima will be in Lima for a while. Trying to figure out where I can. There's For those of you, if you've been to Peru, you know. If you haven't been to Peru before, it is like the UFO. It's the center of the UFO universe. Like in terms of like weird shit that just happens to people and bizarro stuff taking place, ancient contact uh, with extraterrestrials. Peru is it, and there is so much to do. The question is how much can I get done in a couple of weeks, and that's what I'm trying to figure out now. So my plan is uh, to finalize some of that in the next 2 weeks. And while I'm there, I'm going to try and do some really cool UFO stuff for you guys, and hopefully a couple of live streams from there. Oh, but yeah, I've got Project Aquarius. Can you see Project Aquarius back there? Yeah, Brian can see. I got it back there on the shelf. Magic Russ, your trip to Peru sounds interesting. Peru is awesome. It has some of the best food in the world. I love Peru. The culture's awesome. The people are great. The food is second to none. The Andes are fucking gargantuan, and to be in that mountain range is just a constant reminder of how infinitesimally small we all are, and how Mother Nature is so fucking badass. And I just it's like my wife and I have this joke. She's like, my people built a city in the clouds. But go ahead, regale me of your tales of going to Jersey Mike's and tell me what, how was that? But Cusco is awesome in terms of places you can go visit. I highly recommend it. Grouch says, very cool, Clint. What a trip. Is it a vacation trip or a channel trip? It's a little bit of both. This one's going to be visiting some family and doing a little sightseeing, and then I'm going to try to work in some work while I'm there, just because of how much cool UFO stuff there is. I thought about trying to go see the Tridactyls and see if I could work that out. I don't know. It's a whole thing. I'm not particularly captivated by that story, so I don't want to necessarily burn up a bunch of time on the trip chasing it down. But it could be interesting. I don't know. Melissa Barton, hey, welcome aboard. Welcome to I Want to Believe. Thanks for being a member. Great to have you. And thanks to everybody else who is already a member or for being a member for a very long time. You guys support the channel by making it possible for me to do this every single month and justify the time expense and the actual monetary expense of hosting a channel and trying to build an entire world around it. It's a whole thing. Great night skies in Peru. Yeah, especially at that altitude when you're up high. It's awesome. It's like another planet. What about the Nazca lines? You could do a flyover. I'm thinking about doing a flyover. They do really great balloon rides. You can do hot air balloons. You can rent plane and fly over it. You can do helicopter tours and stuff. Thinking about doing something like that. There are ruins all over the country. There's a really cool portal, supposedly, that might be fun to visit. Magic Rust. The whole of South America seems to be a favorite spot for our NHI friends. Maybe it's the climate. You know, it's like this. The idea that these things just started to show up at Roswell and after we developed nuclear weapons is so short-sighted. I mean, there are cultures around the world who have had relationships with these beings for thousands of years, and I think that's why you'll find that, like, it's been my experience, especially with like my wife's family and all the people that I talk to when I'm traveling through Peru. They take, like, UFOs are not a big deal. It doesn't really rock their world the way it rocks my world, because it's just accepted that that's a part of the world and they're in it and people encounter them all the time. And it's just kind of like, of course, their attitude is sort of like, well, duh. But I don't know. And there's something kind of comforting about that. Brian Park says, don't go into the light, Clint. We don't want to lose you. I will stay away from the light. Okay, guys. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there for today, but that's the show. We're going to be looking at more stuff from Dan Burisch as I get this edit together. It's been slow going because there's a lot of raw material to work with, but let me know what you think in the chat. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm going to be doing some more stuff in the next couple of days here. We've got tomorrow's live stream with Xander and myself. I think Dan might join us. Maybe Pavel, possibly Eric. We'll see who's out there. And that'll be our Doomer Thursday. And then I'm going to be doing some hardcore editing throughout the weekend. So my hope is to get this video done and out the door by next week. We'll see. It's like, how much stuff can you leave out and still make it? I mean, it's just too much. So thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Again, we'll be back for our Doomer Thursday live stream this week. Come back and hang out with us. We'll be talking about current events, recent news, the whole, I don't know, all the crazy shit that's going on YouTube and Reddit and X and everything else. We'll get into it and break it all down. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to go hang out with my kid. I'll see you on the next one. Keep looking up.
Night Shift. Your safe space for talking about UFOs, UAPs, NHI, disclosure, and everything else your friends, family, and coworkers are so sick and tired of hearing you go on and on about.